Kentucky's Voice Radio, covering the latest state and local issues with Tom Fallbush, Bob Scott, and Jim Waters.
And I am Jim Waters here, coming to you on this Hump Day version of Kentucky's Voice. Glad to have you with us. Hope you'll join the discussion today at 502-571-0970, our Kentucky's Voice text line, anything we talk about today. And we've got a full show today. But I do want to talk to you for a moment about this show. And I want to really encourage you to partner with us in a couple of different ways. One is, as I just said, by letting us know your questions and comments. And the longer we do this, the more we do it, I think the better we're getting and the more interesting topics and guests we have. And so this is your chance to weigh in and partner with us on this Kentucky's Voice project, which is the only statewide media source that's claiming to be a conservative, common sense source of news and opinion. That means what we report here, we report from a conservative point of view and a faith-based point of view when that's part of the story, which it often is in our state, in our community. We make no bones about that, to use an overused phrase. We are very open about that and we very much want you to know that that's what we're doing here. And but we welcome your comments and your contribution. And maybe you don't always agree. That's okay, too. We don't all have to agree on everything. In fact, sometimes it's in the discussion and debate that we can learn from each other as well. But we want your comments, and that's one way to partner with us. And then also contribute to this effort. This is a listener-supported effort, and you can do this very easily. You can text KY Voice to 53555, and that's another way you can partner with us. And I want you to know this is a unique opportunity to build a media powerhouse that's needed here in Kentucky. I mean, where else are you going to turn to that when you turn it on, it's always going to be offering reporting, analysis, and opinion from a conservative point of view. And you might not think this is that important right now. I mean, things are going our way if you're a conservative. You might say, well, Trump's in office. Republicans are in control in Kentucky, except in the governor's office, of course. And that's a reason right there to engage in this effort and in the coming months and years here in Kentucky. You might not think it's needed right now as much, but you're going to think differently before long, I think, because that's the way conservatives tend to do. They tend to wait until things turn left before acting. Right now, conservative populism is on the rise, but there's going to come a time when that pendulum is going to swing back, as it always does the other way. It's been that way throughout our entire history. And when that happens, what you do today, what you give today, how you invest today will make it possible to have this strong conservative voice on the air every day that cannot be silenced by some Andy Bashir executive order. So I invite you to partner with us today. It's very simple. Text KY Voice to 53555. And also text us your thoughts on the show or any of the issues we discussed today or anything else that's on your mind right now. If you just want to text and say, hey, we're listening, we're watching, let us know. 502-571-0970. We're glad to have you with us here on Hump Day. Coming up on the show today, we're going to be joined by Dr. Gary Houchens from Western Kentucky University to talk about what's in the reconciliation bill. Of course, Dr. Houchens, a big mover and shaker in the school choice movement in Kentucky. And I'm sorry, it's actually the one big, beautiful bill, guys. But part of that bill, school choice, supporters are going to like, I think. But the question is, will it help us here in Kentucky and the struggles we've had to bring education freedom here? What difference will it make in our state? That's our main concern in our conversation today with Dr. Houchens. And then we're going to look at some comments that the father of a woman who was kidnapped at knifepoint last week right here in Louisville, forced to drive to the bank and withdraw thousands of dollars for a violent criminal who attacked her and her family. We're going to see what some of his comments were about this and what he has to say about law enforcement here. But first, a story that's got the left in a tizzy, but has real Americans cheering. President Trump's bold move to rename U.S. Navy ships, shifting away from civil rights activists to true war heroes. It's controversial, but it's begun with Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth announcing the Navy would rename the U.S. Navy ships, the U.S. Navy ship Harvey Milk to the U.S. Navy ship Oscar V. Peterson. So back during the Biden years, the Navy started naming ships after folks like Harvey Milk, who was a gay rights activist, and other civil rights figures. Now, don't get me wrong, America's all about freedom, but I think this is the right move because we're not just talking about any ship here. We're talking about our Navy ships that should honor, if possible, if it's possible to honor those who fought and bled and died on the battlefield, then that should take precedent over any political symbol, whatever your politics may be. And that's exactly how President Trump is approaching this. It's not so much the fact either that Harvey Milk was gay, which he was, he served in the Navy, but he came out as gay in his service, but that he aggressively pushed that gay agenda in the faces of Americans. A lot of people didn't like that, and rightfully so. You know, what you do behind closed doors is your business, but don't try to make me accept it or make me sign on to it. We should be tolerant. We live in a tolerant society, but it doesn't mean I have to get on board with your agenda. Okay. And Harvey Milk, though, he wasn't militant, but he was very aggressive, very controversial. And opponents of this move claim that it's appropriate to name a Navy ship after him because he had been in the Navy. Lots of soldiers have been in the Navy. No, the reason that ship was named that by the Biden administration was because he was a gay activist who happened to have served in the Navy. Take away his activism, and what other reason would there be to give him any additional attention? So what the Pentagon is saying is if we're going to name ships after individuals, they should be individuals who accomplish something relevant to what the ship actually does. That should be fairly non-controversial. And so they're renaming this ship after Oscar V. Peterson, who was a World War II hero, a chief petty officer who earned the Medal of Honor posthumously for his bravery during the Battle of the Coral Sea. Oscar Peterson single-handedly closed bulkhead valves while gravely wounded, saving his ship, saving his crew, but lost his life there at the Battle of the Coral Sea in the Pacific at the age of 42. That's the kind of warrior ethos we need. And this is all part of a bigger push to roll back these divisive diversity, equity, and inclusion, DEI initiatives in the military that many believe have been weakening our military. It's about Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth's commitment to restore a warrior mentality to our armed forces. It's about putting warfighting first again and moving away from this idea that the military should provide the experiment for every social and cultural fad that comes along, especially since most of those are, let's just be honest, woke. Here's what the Secretary of Defense had to say.
Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth says the USNS Harvey Milk will be renamed the Oscar V. Peterson. He says the decision was made to take the politics out of ship naming.
We're not renaming the ship to anything political. This is not about political activists, unlike the previous administration. Instead, we're renaming the ship after a United States Navy Congressional Medal of Honor recipient.
That's Pete Hegseth. Reports say the Trump administration is eyeing others in the John Lewis-class oilers, like those named for Harriet Tubman, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and Thurgood Marshall. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth is a real veteran himself. He's leading the charge to, quote, take the politics out of ship naming and refocus on merit and readiness. And President Trump's approach, and he said this when he signed executive orders in the past. He said, I'm committed to meritocracy and to the elimination of race-based and sex-based discrimination within the armed forces of the United States. No individual, no group within our armed forces should be preferred or disadvantaged on the basis of sex, race, ethnicity, color, or creed. That's straight talk from the president who is in the process. We're seeing history being made of rebuilding our military into a great fighting machine. The left is howling, but guess what, folks? Recruitment is up. Recruitment is up. Recruitment had dropped, and now it's up again as the true purpose of the military is being restored. And so is President Trump right? What do you think about this renaming of ships and renaming them in honor of folks who actually fought in battles, who actually paid the price, who made a sacrifice for this country? I think it's a good idea. And not because I necessarily have a problem with activism or people protesting their views, but because it's appropriate for a Navy ship to be named after a Navy warrior. And it's appropriate for you to stay with us here. Dr. Gary Houchens from Western Kentucky University next. An expert on school choice. We'll talk about what's happening in Kentucky and the big, beautiful bill next.
Are you ready to stand for truth? Kentucky is at a crossroads, and we need voices that won't back down. This is your moment to rise, speak up, and be part of a movement that's changing the narrative in the Commonwealth. Kentucky's Voice is calling on bold citizen journalists, fearless editors, and those unafraid to speak truth in the public square. Volunteer, intern, contribute. Scan the QR code or visit kyvoice.org to join the fight. This is more than media. This is your moment. You are Kentucky's voice.
Kentucky's Voice Radio, online at kyvoice.org.
Welcome back to Kentucky's Voice. Hey, thanks for staying with us today. We appreciate this. You know, without you, we don't have a show here, and there is no voice. This is about your voice. This Kentucky's Voice program is, at the end of the day, about your voice as a conservative Kentuckian and as one who cares about this country deeply. I believe the people watching this, listening to this show, are among those who care the most about what's happening with our country. We want to hear from you. 502-571-0970 is our Kentucky's Voice text line, and you can support this program. Text KY Voice to 53555. And by the way, you're hearing this program live on the radio, and you can see us this afternoon. Hey, you can see my new Kentucky's Voice shirt. How you like that? I can't see it too well, a little bit, but we have some cool new shirts here. So thanks to Tom Fallbush for getting that done. But you can tune in at 4 o'clock today on Channel 21 WBNA right here in Louisville to see this program. It will be a repeat, but you hear it live on the radio. So moving on now to our next segment today. You know, it's an understatement to say that the school choice movement in Kentucky has historically faced significant hurdles, positioning the state as really one of the few in the nation without robust options for families seeking alternatives to traditional public schools, usually the ones to which they are assigned, without much thought about what's best for their children and what's the best school, the best educational setting for their children. For decades, we have lacked what other states have had: charter schools, voucher programs, education savings accounts. And this has been largely due to our courts and the opposition to school choice here, and the courts interpreting school choice legislation as being unconstitutional. Our legislators have attempted several times to introduce school choice measures. They have passed several measures like tax credit scholarships, like charter schools. They've been struck down in the courts. Back in the fall, in November 2024, Kentucky voters considered Constitutional Amendment 2, which would have amended the Constitution to allow the General Assembly to fund education outside of the public school system, which about 48 other states have some form of such program. But we remain behind in this area. The amendment failed decisively, and critics have all kinds of reasons for why it did. But despite all of this, And this setback, there's a new opportunity emerging at the federal level through the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, a Budget Reconciliation Act passed by Congress last month, signed into law by President Trump. This legislation introduces the first ever federal tax credit scholarship program, offering a dollar-for-dollar non-refundable tax credit to individuals and businesses donating to scholarship granting organizations. These SGOs that can then provide scholarships to eligible students, those from households, as the bill says, earning up to 300% of their county's median income. And they can use those dollars for private school tuition, for tutoring, for online courses, for other educational services. It's very similar to what we tried to pass here in Kentucky. What actually did pass the legislature here in Kentucky in 2021, but was struck down by our really I want to use a lot of adjectives here. We'll just say our state Supreme Court. But this program passed in the One Big Beautiful Bill Act will begin in 2027 with private donations rather than public funds. And that can be up to $5 billion annually in tax credits available nationwide. Now, one of the important things about this is that states must opt in for their residents to participate. That is going to create a potential lifeline for Kentucky parents if Kentucky can opt in and find a way to do that. Those who are going to benefit the most are going to be lower income families whose kids are trapped in underperforming schools. It will expand access to better educational opportunities for them. In a recent op-ed published in the Bowling Green Daily News, Dr. Gary Houchens, who's director of the Educational Leadership Doctoral Program at Western Kentucky University and who advocates for school choice in Kentucky, also advocated for Kentucky lawmakers to seize on this federal opportunity. Drawing on his expertise in education policy, Dr. Houchens critiques the state's longstanding resistance to school choice and urges action to empower families. And Dr. Houchens, that was kind of a long introduction, but I wanted to set the stage so that we could get into your thoughts about the general landscape and what's going on with school choice in Kentucky. Maybe we should start there and then kind of work our way down to what's happening with the very latest in this federal school choice bill, but or in this One Big Beautiful Act with a school choice option in there and its potential benefit. But can you give us an overview of where we are? What's the current state of school choice here in Kentucky, and why are we still one of the few holdouts here when it comes to offering options like charter schools or tax credit scholarships to families? Welcome and help us set us up here.
Thanks, Jim. Always good to talk with you about this and other education issues. And as you noted in your introduction, you're absolutely right. Kentucky is severely behind the rest of the nation in terms of giving ordinary families the same kinds of education options that affluent families enjoy every day. And many other states have embraced a wide range of school choice policy options to help families access additional education choices. The public education establishment in all states, but especially in Kentucky, is one of the most powerful political forces, and they exert enormous pressure on state legislators to restrict education access, to maintain their monopoly. And even in other states that have embraced some level of school choice, those programs are often heavily restricted under law. And of course, in Kentucky, they have been deemed impossible to consider by the state Supreme Court, as you noted in their assessment of our most recent school choice legislation. The Kentucky State Supreme Court issued what I believe was an extremely biased and flawed legal opinion interpreting the state's constitution as banning all forms of school choice. We don't think that's accurate, but nevertheless, they're the state Supreme Court. And that backed us into the corner of having to try to amend the Constitution on last year's ballot, an effort that was unsuccessful. We can talk about some of the reasons why that was likely the case. But right now, the federal government has thrown us a lifeline through this One Big Beautiful Budget Reconciliation Act that the public education establishment can't stop Kentuckians from participating in. as long as our state legislature will take action to make sure we can participate.
Yeah, and when you talk about the education establishment, you're talking about, who are we talking about?
Yeah, well, we're talking about basically the public school districts of Kentucky. We're talking about the state teachers union, and we're especially talking about the state school superintendents. And they exert, of course, enormous influence over ordinary rank and file classroom teachers. And when you talk about school choice to ordinary classroom teachers, typically there's a lot of openness to the concept and to the idea. But as it unfolds as a public policy debate, the unions and the superintendents use all of their resources they have available to convince teachers that if Kentucky were to accept school choice, that would lead to massive cuts in education funding, to the loss of teacher jobs. Scenarios that simply do not pan out when you look at the experience of school choice in other states.
Right.
It's scare tactics. It's false. But the superintendents have the ability to call all the teachers to mandatory meetings and spread this kind of misinformation to them, making it very difficult for us to have a real debate. Right,
which they did we saw that during the Amendment 2 campaign in particular with school choice. We're talking with Dr. Gary Houchens, Director of the Educational Leadership Doctoral Program at Western Kentucky University. And what that means really is you're preparing future educational leaders, hugely important. And we're so fortunate that you're also willing to talk about this issue and help Kentuckians understand how important this is. We'd like for you to stay with us for another segment here. We've got a lot more to talk about here on Kentucky's Voice. We hope you'll join the discussion at 502-571-0970. Coming up more with Dr. Gary Houchens on school choice and what the big, beautiful bill could do for Kentucky's families that Kentucky's education establishment could do nothing to stop. Stay with us. Don't go away.
Back to Kentucky's Voice Radio, online at kyvoice.org.
Thanks for staying with us here on Kentucky's Voice. We are at 502-571-0970. That's our Kentucky's Voice text line. Love to hear from you. What do you think about the renaming of the U.S. Navy ships? And what do you think about the possibility that the big, beautiful bill could end up providing Kentucky families with something that the entire education establishment here in Kentucky is opposed, and there's nothing they could do about it? We'd love to hear from you, 502-571-0970. And we also want to hear more from our guest today, Dr. Gary Houchens, who joins us from Western Kentucky in the Central Time Zone. Thank you, sir. We had to translate those time differences there to make sure we had you at the right time here, but we appreciate you taking some time out of your busy day to talk with us. And you've done an op-ed recently on how the Kentucky's leaders should take advantage of this scholarship tax credit opportunity, if you will, in the big, beautiful bill to give Kentucky families what they've been denied and what families in most other states have, and that is an opportunity to choose a better education for their children. Talk a little bit about how this federal program would work, if you can help us understand who would qualify, how it would work. I know these scholarship granting organizations, we're going to have to, I think, have some of those in order for this to work. So maybe give us some of the nuts and bolts so that parents who are going to be interested in this can really grab a hold of this.
Yeah, so it's a generous scholarship program. Students who are from families who are within 300% of the federal poverty level qualify to participate in this program. And essentially what happens is that an individual donor can offer to make a private donation up to $1,700 a year to a scholarship program that would help eligible students. And they get a credit back on their federal tax bill. And so, folks often have the opportunity to do something good in the world, and they can either make that donation to a worthy student who needs help accessing a new education option, or they can give it to the federal government, who will decide, in their infinite wisdom, how to use that. And so this just gives you an opportunity to make a donation that will help students The donor cannot designate that to a particular student, but they can designate it for an individual school. And so this just creates an opportunity for us to have more privately funded scholarship programs that will help students. And there'll be these independent scholarship granting organizations that will sort of be the go-between between the donors and the schools, who will make sure that the students who have applied for scholarships are eligible, and who will help distribute those funds according to need. And so it's just a great plan that uses private money to give families more education options, and Kentuckians certainly deserve that. More than 20 other states have similar programs, and so there's absolutely no reason why Kentucky shouldn't have this too.
And this would really cover a lot of families here that would love to have the opportunity to provide their children with a better education. That 300% of the median income in counties, and that's really that seems to be a fair way to do it, because median income in some of our counties, even here in Kentucky, there'd be a big disparity in those, but it will be based on that. And it seems like that's a reasonable approach, but that it's big enough, Dr. Houchens, to cover, to really provide a lot of families, even some middle class families, with some financial help to be able to provide their children with a better education. I mean, what's wrong with this? There should be nothing. This shouldn't even be controversial.
Absolutely, and there are a lot of middle class families who, may be able to afford some private school tuition, but the total bill is just out of their reach, and so even having some sort of partial scholarship program in place can make the difference between choosing this school for your kid, which you believe is really the best fit for them, or not being able to do so.
Yeah. And of course, you brought this up earlier about the argument that was used by opponents of Amendment 2 and school choice, which was having choice here will destroy our public education system. And this is probably the number one argument, I think it's worked because people have an emotional tie many times, I think, to public schools, and that's not always a bad thing. I mean, we certainly want people to care about their schools, to be invested in that, in education, in whatever form that may take. But to make these outrageous claims, which Governor Beshear did and others in the establishment, particularly, as you mentioned, the superintendents and the teachers unions, that this would destroy public education. I mean, it's pretty easy to answer that when you look at, as you mentioned, more than 20 other states have this type of program. And then most states have some options like public charter schools. And what we're finding is just the opposite, is it not? That in those states where there are more choices, it seems like the public education system is also rising higher and doing a better job of educating its students. Am I going too far with that?
No, you're absolutely right. I mean, that's what we see in states with the most robust school choice policy environments. Florida is probably our best test case. Florida has some of the oldest school choice policies. They have some of the highest levels of participation in school choice, and yet Florida's public school students outperform Kentucky's public school students across nearly every demographic. And so what we see is that school choice causes improvements in performance even in the traditional public schools. So whether your family chooses to exercise a non-public option under school choice or not, all students stand to benefit. And that's just the bottom line and the bare facts about school choice. So Kentucky, which has continued to struggle with unacceptably low levels of student achievement in reading, math, and other subjects, only stands to benefit by embracing school choice.
Yeah, and you bring up a hugely important point there. And among the failure in our education system it's been disproportionately has fallen on low-income minority students. They're the ones that have really borne the brunt of a failing education system, because many times they're assigned to a school, an educational setting that doesn't work for them. And if you're wealthy and if you have means, you can have school choice you can send your child and pay that tuition to a private school without without assistance. But if you're not in that position, I think it comes down to a moral responsibility to do what we can to provide, especially those who are already disadvantaged with opportunities. Isn't this what school choice really shines in those areas?
Absolutely. And as you noted, parents who have access to resources already have school choice. Right here in Kentucky, there's plenty of school choice if parents have the means to pay for private tuition or to buy a home in the school district that they desire for their children to live in. But if you are not of that level of means, then you are basically left taking whatever the local public schools give you. And that works for many students. But for some, it doesn't. And it should be up to the individual parent, not a politician, to decide what's the best education fit for each child.
And it shouldn't even be up to a superintendent or a teachers union boss or a governor, as you said, a politician. Talking with Dr. Gary Houchens, who runs the Educational Leadership Doctoral Program at Western Kentucky University, and who's been just such an articulate and important leader in this movement for school choice. Dr. Houchens, just for a moment, we don't have much time left, but during the last session, the legislature did act to protect a school choice option here in Kentucky in terms of the Kentucky Virtual Academy, which the state Board of Education tried to sneak through a regulation that would have pretty much immediately shut the school down, which now has over 3,000 students. And the legislature said, we're going to give this school some more time to demonstrate their ability to provide a strong education for their children, many of whom are making that change to a different school because where they were wasn't working for them. Is this an important decision? And what do you think about this decision by the legislature?
Yeah, I think it was a great decision on their part to protect what is really an exciting and innovative educational approach. What virtual education does with all of its potential problems is that it gives a vast number of students access to education options that aren't limited by geography. And that's exactly what was happening with the Kentucky Virtual Academy, is that they were serving students from all across the state whose parents had deemed that they were not getting the education that they needed in their assigned public school. And of course, school districts that think that they own those students were upset about this new form of competition and exerted pressure, I believe, on the State Department of Education to try to restrict that school's activities. The legislature very wisely stepped in and said, no, we're going to give them the opportunity to continue to do what they're doing. And in time, we'll see if the Kentucky Virtual Academy is going to be a success for many of these students or not. Right now, it should be up to the parents of those students to decide what's the best educational fit for them.
We've just got a minute left, but some cynical people have said, well, people are just taking advantage of this, parents, because they don't want to bear the consequences of truancy in their district, things like that. What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt there are some parents who don't make good choices for their children, right? There's no doubt about that. But there have to be other mechanisms for dealing with that and holding parents accountable. What you can't do is use that as an excuse to deny, especially low-income parents in general, the opportunity to choose the school that is best for their kids. You can't take that away from families with resources. Anyway, they already have that freedom. We shouldn't be able to take that away from low-income families either.
Well, Dr. Gary Houchens, how fast has this gone by? Thank you for being with us today. I hope we can see some more opportunities for public school choice in the days ahead and the years ahead with our legislature. And I think they've done a great job working with what they have. We need the courts to come along now. But the federal school choice bill won't depend on our state Supreme Court. Thank you, Dr. Houchens. Have a great day. Stay with us here on Kentucky's Voice. We'll be back with our final segment. The father of a Louisville woman abducted from her home is speaking out.
Kentucky's Voice is your home for real news, real people, and real answers. But we can't do it without you. Your financial support helps us bring truth to the forefront, hold leaders accountable, and give a voice to the people of the Commonwealth. Join the fight today. Give online at kyvoice.org or text KYVoice to 53555. Every gift makes a difference. Stand with us. Speak up. Stay strong. You are Kentucky's voice.
Back to Kentucky's Voice Radio, online at kyvoice.org.
502-571-0970. What do you think? Should Kentucky's parents have options when it comes to where they educate their children? If a school's not working for a child, shouldn't a parent have the right to find the school that will work for them and prepare them for the future? Otherwise, what will the consequences be? The big, beautiful reconciliation bill, as you heard Dr. Houchens talking about, would provide some options for Kentucky parents that the education establishment in Kentucky has so far succeeded in keeping them from having, even though the parents in over 20 other states have similar options, and parents in 45 other states, at least 45 other states, and even the District of Columbia have the option of charter schools and other school choice alternatives as well. So want to hear what you think about that. Turning now in our final segment here on Kentucky's Voice, and thanks for staying with us today. We're here every day from 11 a.m. to noon every weekday. You can hear it live right here on the radio. If you're listening right now, you know that. But you can also hear us on and watch us this afternoon on Channel 21 WBNA at 4 p.m. Join us there as well. The father of a Louisville woman who was abducted from her home near the Oxmoor Shopping Center here in Louisville on Friday, along with her 2 children, before being forced to withdraw $20,000 from a local bank at knifepoint, is speaking out on social media. First, though, let's catch up on this story with some coverage from WDRB Channel 41 right here in Louisville.
Exclusively with WDRB about being kidnapped with her children at knifepoint and then forced to drive a man to rob a bank. Addie Shaney sat down with Jennifer Strong, who walks us through the decisions that she made to keep her family safe and alive.
It was a normal Friday morning. Jennifer Strong was making breakfast for her children. Then she heard the back door open twice.
He had a knife, a large knife, which resembled a machete. And he started to yell, "How many people are in this house?" I put my hands up and I told him not to hurt us.
The man police say did this, Armin Langford, ordered them into the car. Strong in the driver's seat, her 11-year-old beside her, Langford and her 7-year-old in the back. With a knife to Strong's throat, Langford demanded she drive to PNC Bank and take out $20,000.
My son that was sitting in the front seat with me had his arms around my neck holding me, and he was begging him not to, the guy in the back seat, not to kill me. And I asked him if I could reach around and hold my youngest son's hand, and he said yes.
Langford told her to drive faster. She said no, that there are many cops in the neighborhood. Strong is a true crime fanatic. She's learned it's important to gain trust.
I told the guy that my oldest son was autistic to please not hurt us. My youngest son was very scared.
Once at the ATM, she knocked on the window. Langford made his threat to the teller.
I need $20,000 or I will kill her now.
He ordered the boys out of the car. Strong was sure this is the last time she'd ever see them.
I yelled out to the car that I loved them, and I said a prayer, and I grabbed my hand, and I grabbed my chest, and I said to myself, this is it. This is what it feels like to die. And then I told the bank, he's killing me now. He's stabbing me again. And then they came out.
The teller spread $20,000 on the ground. Langford grabbed the cash and ran. Strong was rushed to the hospital for stitches and surgery. The knife stopped just centimeters from her lung. She was released Friday, back home, alive, and under the same roof as her children.
It was the best moment of my life, and it will stay the best moment of my life.
But the family says this never would have happened if Langford served his full sentence on another burglary charge. In 2024, he was sentenced to 14 years in prison, but a judge released him early on shock probation.
I'd like to know how they're sleeping.
Yeah.
at night.
You
right
caused
now.
this.
Police arrested him just after 4:30 Friday.
He deserves the same terror that he inflicted on us.
The physical wounds will heal faster than the emotional ones. Another child was sleeping upstairs when her family was kidnapped.
You should love your relatives as much as you can. It's never something I thought would ever happen.
Jennifer's husband, Brandon, wasn't home.
That's what I'm kind of losing sleep about, is me not being here.
They've already gotten rid of the car used in the crime because the family is too traumatized to get in it. The very next day, her son turned 8, a birthday marked not by the gifts, but by the blessing that everyone was there to watch him blow out the candles.
Every day is a blessing, and take nothing for granted.
Addie Shaney, WDRB News.
There's some wonderful reporting there. This woman's father, Russell Zano. I saw these comments, too late to get him on the show, and we hope to have him on soon. But I wanted to share some of these comments he made in a Facebook post about this incident and about the law enforcement community here in Louisville as part of that. And that's the reason I went through that today because, first of all, just the horrific nature of this story and what kind of an animal does this to a mother and invades her home, threatens to kill her, really has her believing this is it for her and her children. And the guy who, if he had served the sentence that he was given previously, wouldn't have been out to do this, apparently. And so, that's another example. Sometimes, folks, it's not that we need tougher sentences or longer sentences. It's that we just need to enforce the laws we already have on the books. And we don't need some woke, left-wing, feel-good, warm and fuzzy judge letting a violent criminal out naively on the street without considering what the consequences of that might be to the community. And here we have a major population area here. We're talking about right in the city, right near a major shopping area. And, but this woman's father, Russell Zano, who's apparently a Vietnam veteran, and haven't had a chance to speak with him yet, but this is on his profile on Facebook. He was a U.S. Army sergeant and advisor in Vietnam. He's an attorney here in Louisville. He graduated from the U of L Brandeis School of Law, right here, one of us in Louisville, Kentucky. And he just wrote some comments that I wanted to share, at least some of these. He said, "We all too often hear stories of our police committing acts of unnecessary violence against the public. But there's another story that needs to be told and shared, showing the humanity of these men and women in times of extreme stress. This past Thursday morning began at my daughter's home, as most days her husband had left for work. And he tells the story about how his grandsons, 7 and 11, were goofing off, playing around like young kids do. He said, my daughter heard the door open, a man masked, carrying a machete, rushed into the home, and he told the story. It was terrifying. He says, during these moments of chaos, the bank staff did all they could to keep everyone calm and cared for. They stayed with my grandsons as EMS raced my daughter to University Hospital for surgery. Their dad was called, and he raced to the bank to pick up the boys who were being cared for by police officers and bank staff. A nurse at the hospital called me and my wife. She stayed at the hospital during surgery, supported by her coworkers, while the boys were dropped off with me so their dad could meet detectives at the house and bank. You know, all these things happen when something like this happens. There's a whole row of dominoes that falls in terms of the impact it has on a family or on an individual or on their lives. He says, thank God my daughter's injuries were relatively minor and she was able to come home to our home and rest and recover with us and the boys. Now I get to the Louisville Police Department, Robbery Division, St. Matthews Police, and others who move quickly, efficiently, and professionally to catch this evil, evil man. I first met several of them that evening at the processing area downtown where my daughter's car had been sent. They were eminently polite, clearly as upset about the trauma inflicted on my family as I was, and I couldn't thank them enough for all they did. But there's more. He said the next day, many, many kids and parents were at my daughter's home to celebrate my grandson's 8th birthday. To bring some necessary joy following such a harrowing experience, and some of the first to arrive were a large number of the police officers and detectives who had performed so magnificently. They had with them a large basket of police badges, challenge tokens, police stuffed bears and dogs, and more than a few gift cards. They stayed for quite a while, and later that evening, 2 police carts drove to the home with lights flashing for the boys to climb on and explore. I will be forever grateful for their service and humanity. It will be a long road for them to recover from the trauma of that terrible day, but I will always make a point to thank any police officer I see for their service. I would ask you to do the same. Please share. And that's Russell Zabo. If you want to get on Facebook, it's ZAIBO. And I want to thank you for your wonderful post. And we pray for a speedy recovery and healing of the trauma experienced by your daughter and grandchildren. And now, off of the Kentucky's Voice text line about this story at 502-571-0970, this animal who was let out and allowed to do these kinds of things, and really terrible. I mean, to realize that he had not served a full sentence for another crime he had committed. And this one texter says that the judges are not held accountable when this happens. And he's right. He says it's time to make, and another texter says it's time to make those judges' names out in public, and to make sure that the public knows who they are and who made these decisions. And you know, I couldn't agree more. I think if a police officer acts in an unprofessional or dishonorable way or breaks the law, I think their name should be out there too. I think we should have full transparency here. But when a judge makes a decision like this that has such a big impact on a family like this, and almost leads to death, destruction of a family, certainly their names need to be out there for the next election, because these folks are elected. And it's time for you, the voters in Louisville, to find out a little more about who you're electing to every one of these positions, whether it's judges, whether it's school board members, whether it's Metro Council members, whoever it is. You need to know who you're electing and what their performance is and what their record is. And I think we need to have that for law enforcement, but we also need to have it for judges who let these criminals out on the streets. Let's enforce the law we have. We don't need more laws. We need to enforce the ones we have and make sure they're working. Thanks for joining us today. That's all the time we have here on Kentucky's Voice. Jim Waters, talk to you soon. God bless. Have a great rest of the day.